Hi there. Today we're going to be looking at a new way of organizing data, and this is going to be called a stem and leaf plot. So first we're going to need some data. So I have some different numbers here, and what we're going to be doing is first, in order to create a stem and leaf plot, is your data always has to be in order from least to greatest. So I'm going to take my data and I'm going to organize it from least to greatest first. Alright, now, so my data is 5, 12, 17, and 34. Now, to create a stem and leaf, we have to separate the stem from the leaf. Now, I'm going to actually start down here on the greatest side, and we're going to look at our number 34. So your stem is always going to be whatever is not in your ones place. Your leaf is always your ones place. So basically, I'm going to chop off the ones place and leave my stem, which is 30. For 17, I will chop off my ones place, or my 7, and leave the 1. For my 12, chop off my 2, leave my stem of 1. And then 5 is kind of interesting because when I chop off my ones place, there looks to be no stem there. So if we wanted to think of this as a 2-digit number, of course, we would say there is a 0 placeholder in the 10 spot. So I'm going to hang on to that for a second. Now, the next thing that we're going to need to do to create our stem and leaf is to actually separate our data into stems. And so this is where you take your data and you put it on a plot that looks like a T-chart. And this side is going to usually be labeled stem, and this side is leaf. So we're going to take our stems in order and place them here with our ones places that go with them over here. So for example, and they're going to go in numerical order or least to greatest. So with our 5, there was nothing in the stem, so my 5 would go here, and this stem is technically going to be a 0. So we're just separating our number. So this represents 5. Now for our next one, for 12, I'm going to trim it just a bit to make it fit better. 12 is not going to be in the 0 stem, it's going to be in the 10s stem, meaning it has a 1 in the 10s place. And then the 2 is going to stay separated over here. So what we have here is a 12. Even though it looks like a 1 spaced by a 2, it's actually a 12. So we only read our data over here. This is a 5 because it's in the 0 spot. This is a 12 because it has a 10 on the stem. So our next number, 17, we actually don't need this stem. Why? Because we already have a 10 stem going. So what we're going to do is place the 7 over here beside the 2. So what we have here now are our 3 numbers, 5, 12, 17, because we have to remember it's paired with that stem over there. Next up, our next number is 34, but here's one of the tricky things about stem and leaf. Once you start with a stem, you have to go in order for all of them. So if we have a 0, a 10s, next should be 20s. So even though we don't have any data in the 20s, we have to still leave the 20 stem there. And then next up would be our 30 stem. So we're going to use the 30 stem down here and put our 4 with it, which we know creates the number 34. So this is an example of a completed stem and leaf. So here are our 4 numbers, 5, 12, 17, 34. We do have to have our 20s there, kind of saving its spot to show the stretch of our data. So there's a couple of things here. The rule is you have to keep your stems in order. You cannot skip a stem. And then also your other thing to look at is your numbers have to be in order, like so. And then we want to read only the numbers here. So this is 5, 12, 17, 34. So that's our quick little intro to stem and leaf. Now let's look at it a little further. Let's practice making some more stem and leaf on this practice sheet. So let me zoom in a bit for you guys to be able to see better. Alright, let's start down here. We have all kinds of data here, and remember the first thing we want is our data to always be in order least to greatest. So I'm going to look at my stems first and think, let's see, I see 30s, 40s, 50s, I don't see anything else. So what I'm going to do is first grab all my 30s in one color. Alright, and so my first stem is going to be 30s. And I'm going to put my numbers in order. So this will be 31, 34, 38. So I've just split my 10 spot and my 1 spot to create my stem and leaf. So next up I'm going to look at 40s, 48, 42, 48, 45. And if I'm going in order, I want to look at 42 first, then 45, and then here's something interesting. There are two 48s, so the way we're going to show that is we're going to put an 8 and another 8. So this shows 42, 45, 48, 48. Next up, we'll go to my 50s, and we can see we have a 56, 54, 55. So we'll just put those in order. 54, 55, 56. So we've got our data all organized, and now it's very quick and easy to answer questions like, what was the least number in our data? 31. What's the greatest number? 56, because they're in order least to greatest. How many numbers are in the 40s? 1, 2, 3, 4. So this is another quick and easy way to organize our data and to be able to answer questions about it. Let's look over to this one. We've got numbers in the 60s, 70s, 80s, and 90s. So I'm going to grab my 60s first because they're the lowest stem that I see. I'm putting them in order least to greatest. So 64 will be first, 66, 68, and 69. Next up will be my 70s stem. So I've got 75 and 79. Next up, we've got 80s. So we've got an 85 and an 87. And then lastly, for this stem, we have a 90s stem, so we have a 90 and a 92. So, again, when I read these numbers, it's 64, 66, 68, 69, 75, 79, 85, 87, 90, 92. What you don't want to do is you don't want to think about these as a 4, 6, 8, 9. That's not how those work, because you have to include the stem from that side. So all of these are 60s, 70s, 80s, and 90s. Alright, let's try this one, because we have something interesting that happens in this data, and let's see if you remember what I said to do in this situation. So we've got 10s, it looks like first, so all of these numbers are in the 10 stem. So I'll put my 1, and we have a 10, an 11, and a 15. Just so happen to already be in chronological order. Alright, next. Our next number in least to greatest looks like it's going to be in the 30s. So something has happened here that we have to be careful of. This is not correct. Why? I cannot jump straight to my 30s. Because once you start a stem, your stems have to go in order. So even though there's no numbers in the 20s, I'm going to put the 20s there. And then I'm going to move on to my 30s. So my 30s had a 30, 35, 36, 37. So it's very important to show that there is no data in the 20s there. So we just leave this blank. So there's no numbers in the 20s, but we still have to show that there's a stem there because our stems always have to go in order. All right, next we have 40s. And it looks like we have just a 41 and a 46, so I'll put them in order. And now we can read our data from least to greatest. 10, 11, 15, 30, 35, 36, 37, 41, 46. So, hopefully you have a good understanding of how to create stem and leaf diagrams now. And we are going to answer questions about them, kind of interpret the data a little bit, just like we did with line plots. And really, with stem and leaf, the same things you had to be careful with when you were interpreting line plots, you need to be careful with stem and leaf. And that's paying attention to words like how many numbers are at least 30. So knowing that 30 is the smallest that counts and counting all the way up. So that'd be 30, 35, 36, 37, 41, 46. How many numbers are less than 30? So that means you don't count 30 because I said less than 30. So then you're looking at 10, 11, and 15. So as you move into interpreting these stem and leaf plots, think back to the same things you were thinking about when you were doing line plots. And those are our stem and leaf plots.